conversation will be needed to take in English because my Spanish is not that good yet. But I'm trying and working on that. Promise for the next year to try to challenge you with my new language. But at this time, we will take the opportunity and manage that discussion in English. I've been asked to describe the Israeli ecosystem, and which is a very complicated and challenging task, and I made my life even more complicated, if that is not complicated. And I try to give my observations about Latin America and especially Argentina with regard to the things that I'm going to talk about. So in some part of the discussion, I will just start, share with you some of my observations about what I've saw here in the last year and a half, and I'm in Argentina more than I'm in Israel in the last year and a half, and I fell in love with the place and the people. And one important thing, this is not a criticism, this is not judging, this is just reflecting my observations about the things that I saw here in the last year and a half. Three things at the beginning of this discussion, so you will have some tools to deal with the information. The first thing is that this is the most fastest economic growth engine in the world, Formula One, if you only know how to drive it. And if you don't, then you will crash. A lot faster than you can imagine, you're going to crash. So what's make a driver the best? Nothing. It's not about the driver. It's about other things. It's about partnership. It's about partnership between public sector and private sector. And it will not work any other way. There is no driver who can win a race without a team. And there is no team that can win a race without a driver. Drivers are the private sector, risk taker, people who can achieve and act fast. And the private sector is the one that, the public sector is the one that's putting the infrastructure, the engineering, the policies, the strategies in order to let it happen. With a country which is so rich in Argentina, take a moment and read that. And I hope that my Spanish is good enough and I didn't make any big mistakes, and I don't think I did. But this is really important. This is really important because, especially for countries which are got so many natural resources, they will disappear one day. The only thing that will not disappear is knowledge. And the last thing, when you are deciding to developing something new, either this is a startup or a government policy or a national policy, there are things in life you cannot do in small steps. Don't try to cross a chasm in 2 steps. Gravity will make it force. You're gonna fall down. Take big one, take big risks. You might succeed, you might not, but don't try it incrementally in small steps. In order to avoid the situation in which I will be accused that in Israel we've got everything, we've got venture capital, we've got foreign investors, we've got entrepreneurs, we've got resources, we've got universities, I want to tell you, this is Israel then. Then it's just 2 decades ago. This is what we had. 450% inflation rate a year. That's all. And this is Israel today. Again, then and now. And I'm trying to emphasize that because this is a process. This is a process. Nobody born with all of those achievements. And it's not rocket science, it's just hard work. Israel considered to be the just third after the States, with number of companies listed on the NASDAQ, States and China. Israel considered to be the country that managing the largest amount of venture capital money outside the USA, bigger than Germany, England, Germany, UK, France, and others in Europe. A lot of success stories, a lot of R&D centers of foreign players, and this is just a short example of exits. And I just emphasize those exits which are bigger than $250 million, $250 million. Just to let you see that there is scales. There are small one and medium one and very big one, $1.1 billion. Google purchasing Waze, it's an Israeli company. And this money is money that it is cashed into the state of Israel, to entrepreneurs, to investors, to institutional investors, and reinvest again. Just the last 2 quarters of 2015, the total amount of exit crossed the value of $5.3 billion. There is no other countries in the world that's showing those kind of results. And this is very diversified. As you can see, it goes for life science, medical devices, communication, semiconductors. Those are the exits by years and percentage. And no one controls that. No one controls that. It's the market that makes it force. And it's a very, very tiny country. It's a tiny, it's one-fifth of the size of Santa Fe province. It's half of the size of Buenos Aires province from a population point of view. Human Developing Index, really important, ranked 18. Argentina, ranked in the same group. And this is an index that, for me, as someone who is building innovative environment, stated, this index represents the quality of life, education, economic, etc. Argentina is in the first group of the Human Developing Index. One of the last places, but still in the first group. There are 5 groups, and being the first group is very, very encouraging. Israel is a place which is very isolated. Leave politics aside, we cannot trade with our neighbors. Therefore, we need to create companies or to implement strategies that going global from day one. That means that our company is being born global companies that attended to the US market, to the European market, to the Chinese market from day one. Why? Because a local market of 8 million people doesn't count anything. And what does it reflect? It reflects about regulation, if you are in medical devices. It reflects about IP. The only mechanism that creating those days competitive advantage is knowledge. And if you don't know how to protect your knowledge, you didn't do anything. You are absolutely going to lose. You're going to lose this battle of competitive advantage around the world. And this is my first stop. I want to take you to my observations about the current situation in Argentina. Argentina, since 1976 until today, drew out about 25,000 patents. 99%, almost 100% of them failed after 1990. And since 2006, there has been a decrease, a significant one. Since 2000, the level of writing new patent is quite constant, but it's very low. It's very, very low. Where do you write patents? Where do you file patents? Most of it, locally. Who writes patents? Mainly 2 organizations, CONICET and another local branch of a German company. Red flag. Only 6% out of them are granted. Something wrong. Something is wrong. What is it? We need to find out. What are the fields of expertise in Argentina? What are they? What are the things that Argentina is strong at that can be seen by the quality of the knowledge that is being protected? Well, 3 segments. Medical devices, dental, toilet, some chemicals and therapeutics, and steroids. Observation, number 1. The majority of the patents are being filed by what is said, but they are not granted. This is a lot of money that invested. It's not mandatory sure that every patent will be granted at the end, but 6% is too low. It's very low. Second, there is a constant number of patents since 2006. Last but not least, the field medical devices, dental, and toilets. And this is what I want to tell you my personal feeling. When I got that report, I called back to these IP lawyers that made that for me, and I was insulted like I was an Argentinian. I was insulted like I'm an Argentinian because in the last year and a half, I've been to so many of your universities and research centers, and I've saw the level of science. And Argentina is about biotechnology, it's about nuclear reactors, it's about engineering, it's about bioagricultural and engineering agriculturals and food, not about toilet. So I asked him, I told him, you've got a mistake. Please try to find out the real data. And he told me, Oren, I will do so. And he came back to me later and told me, Oren, 2 people checked that. This is the data. So I want to tell you something. And I'm telling you because I've been to all of those universities. In Argentina, there is a lot more than just toilet products. And this is knowledge that is not yet being leveraged. Back to the Israeli case study. In Israel, there is an ecosystem, an high-tech ecosystem, and the high-tech ecosystem is a very complicated living creature that built out of several ingredients. And we do not have the time to talk about all the ingredients because it's a multi-dimensional relationship between each one of them. Government, industry, universities, etc. 2 things we need to remember about the ecosystem. The first one is that the ecosystem cannot work in small scales. That means that if we want to create something in Argentina, we need to do it fast. Create the critical mass fast. And the second thing is that you cannot shut it down. Once you have shut it down, it will be either impossible or very expensive to restart that. This is the story of Israel. No natural resources, traditional industries that go into the Far East, and the government needed to do something. So in the beginning of the 90s, I remind you, mid of the 80s, 450% inflation rate. In the beginning of the 90s, the government doing 2 things. First of all, announced that it will match the private sector with $1 to dollar and setting 10 funds of $100 million. Nobody knew how to call them venture capital in those days, but that was the process. And the second one is that they are establishing technology incubator program in order to integrate about a million immigrants coming from foreign Russia into the state of Israel. In Israel, government is raining R&D grant all the time, and collect its benefits through exit, taxes, etc. This has been done in good days and bad days. And it's very easy to do so in good days, but what about bad days? The internet bubble that was burst in September 2000 and the financial crisis at the States in 2008, the state of Israel continued to invest like nothing has happened. In Israel, there are about 40 government programs that enable entrepreneurs in all stages, seed, generic R&D, competitive R&D, to find government program that will assist them to take their idea one step forward. One rule, always with the private sector. Always complementary by the private sector. And that goes nationally and internationally in supporting the entire life cycle of those companies, from an idea to an IPO, until a moment of an IPO. And even companies which are traded still can get assistance from the state of Israel. How much is that cost? $300 million a year. That's all. That national level. Government budget, only $300 million. In Israel, there is no free meal. If you succeed, pay it back. If you didn't, nothing has happened. Try again and again and again until you will succeed. In Israel, to fail, it's not a problem. On the contrary, it's considered to be an asset. I've recruited a lot of CEOs. I would never recruit a CEO that never failed at least once. If the CV is clean, he's not an interesting guy. He did not learn anything in his life. Government collect back about 1/3 of that in royalties from those companies. That's practically government investing only $200 million annually. That's all. Israel is leading by far all OECD countries with the expenditure, Ruth talked about that, the expenditure of R&D out of the GDP. let me make it very simple. This is working capital. This is what you are paying salaries, buying machinery, having engineering services, manufacturing, whatever. Those are expenditures. And government participation out of that, 300 million, less than 3%. This is about $12 billion. That means expenditure, paying for services, salaries, machineries, equipment every year. $12 billion. This is a phenomenal amount. Is it just this year? No. This index is going to grow from 1995 until today. 85% of that, it's private sector, it's not government sector. And amazingly, half of it, it's not even Israeli money. So whose money is it? Where does this money came from? In Israel, there are about 300 foreign R&D centers that covering the entire scope of activities, IT, clean tech, communication, life science, etc. 300 of them. Did we born with that? Was that a package that the State of Israel was established in at the end of the 40s, and they all been there? No. This is the process. 1949 to 1974, only 3 of them. That's all. And then quiet. Nothing has happened. Until beginning of the 90s. And that was the end of story. Every year, more and more and more multinational organizations put their R&D centers in Israel. Now, the idea is that they are paying with US dollars salaries to Israeli engineers. This is the idea. And they are creating their innovative and their knowledge in the state of Israel. And one other thing, which is related to a very old paradigm. If someone come and buy your company, you did not lose anything, you just earn. Knowledge of today will be irrelevant in 2 years. So if you do not know how to reinvent knowledge, you didn't do anything. So what they are doing is reinventing knowledge. Stop number 2. And stop number 2 related to social responsibility. I've tried to look out in the old economy for the meaning of this term. And I'm educated with economy. I could not find a lot of references to social responsibility in the old economy. But when I Googled that, there was millions of articles about that. This is a byproduct. This is not something that's related to the creation of an ecosystem. This is a byproduct of their presidency in the state of Israel. And notice that they are investing about $40 million annually. Nobody asked them to. This is what they are doing for social responsibility activity. They are contributing around 350,000 working hours of their worker to the people in Israel. They are contributing about 60,000 positions to the working force in Israel. All of them are Israeli. Most of them are Israeli. This is a mechanism that's stopping a brain drain. Now, bear that in mind. In Argentina, in order to equip or to manufacture a PhD guy, it's taking you like 25 years from kids to the end of university. And then what? You are investing in these kids your best efforts, your best education, your best years, and then he's leaving, well, to some other places. This is brain drain. This mechanism can deal and stop brain drain. Assistance to older population, and not less important, gifted youth and struggling youth, kids who need a lot of assistance get assistance from those organizations. And again, this is a contribution. Nobody asked them to do so. It's a byproduct. Going back to the Israeli ecosystem. Universities, one of the most important places where the golden eggs are being created. In Israel, besides every university, there is a TTO, Technology Transfer Office, like CONICET. And they are the one that's responsible to commercialize the IP. In Israel, researchers are highly incentivized to commercialize the IP because they will benefit that personally and the lab will be benefit. Usually the revenue sharing is 40-40-20. 40 for the researcher, 40 for the university, and 20 for the lab. And the lab is the place where the next generation of researchers are being educated, and they see that their professors succeeded to bring more resources to research. It's not granted, you did not need to beg for that. It just came back, and you're going to see it's a bit more than $1,000 a month. And it's a culture that enables our researchers to be part of that. In Israel, TTO, universities, earning about almost $750 million every year of revenues. When I talked about 40-40-20, now imagine yourself that there is a researcher that his IP was commercialized, and he gets $100 million annually every year. That means that he's going to get about $40 million into his bank account and about $20 million into his lab. Any of the researchers in this hall have a budget of $20 million annually, every year, passively, without doing anything. For the labs, I would assume the answer is no. Israel is leading by far, and this is very, very interesting. Expenditure, or the percentage of expenditure, income to investment in R&D budget in universities. Australia, UK, USA, Israel is 30%, they are around 1 or 2%. And it's continued since the last 5, 6, 7 years. Now, one thing to say about that, either Israel do not invest enough money in universities, or the results are phenomenal. And probably the answer is somewhere in between. Culture. In Israel, there is a culture of entrepreneurship. Every day that you will come to Israel, there's going to be any conference, and education for entrepreneurship is done in universities, and it's done in high school. And it's very highly respectable status to be an entrepreneur in Israel. And of course, venture capital. 2014, they have cash out more than $3.1 billion out of their investment in Israel. The average exit is about $83 million. This is something that will be very difficult to find in other territories around the world. And this is just part of it, as because of lack of time, we are quite running. But there are other challenges that policymakers should take into account. And those things are related to regulation about starting a liquidated company. How is it to start? How is it to liquidate a company? If the company does not succeed, most of them will not succeed. There should be a mechanism that make it very easy to open and close companies. Issues of incentives to investors, institutional investors. Issues that related to regulation about ESO, Employee Stock Option Plan, to enable all the people in the startup company to benefit from the success of the company. The Israeli case study of the Tech Incubator. The incubator, the program was established in 1991, and the aim is that the government will invest only in companies which are too risky for the private sector to invest in. Now, that doesn't make any logic. That doesn't make any logic, because if government do not invest, if private sector is not willing to invest, why should government invest in that? But it is working. Government investing around $600,000 in every project, and if you succeed, pay that back by royalties. If you didn't succeed, nothing has happened. Try again and again and again until you will succeed. Critical mass. Israel, 1/5 of the size of Santa Fe, about 18 incubators all over. If we are talking about Argentina, in order to create a critical mass and to create a fast critical mass, national program should be implemented to put 50 of them all around the country, 60 of them all around the country. There is no lack of good quality deal flow. The process has changed its face during the time, and this is another thing for policymakers to remember, that you need to be flexible and you need to adjust your regulation and your policies as time goes by. And this is the structure, this is an example of a new venture that was established in a tech incubator. In time that the government investing 85% of the resources and the private sector only 15, when they come to building the company, there is a new company that is established, the investor can take up to 50%. And the difference between this 15 and 50% in equity, this is shares, this is money, is the success premium. Now imagine yourself that the entrepreneurs or the incubator investing in a company, this is around $100,000 out of the $600,000, right, 15%. Now this company was exit eventually at the value of $100 million. And of course, the investor will be diluted. He will not have 50%, he will have 30%. So let's make the calculation. He invested around $100,000. He get 30 million, reducing 500,000 that he need to pay back, left with 29.5 million, as opposed to a pre-investment of $100,000. This is really interesting. This is the incentivized mechanism for the private sector. The success of this program is phenomenal. The state of Israel invested since 1991 to 2014 about $750 million, around $50 million annually. This is the blue line. The red line is the accumulated amount of money invested by foreign investors in companies in this program only. There are another 40 programs, this one only. If the state of Israel was a venture capital, they have done 6 or 7x on the money. This is phenomenal. Could it be duplicated? Yes, it is. New Zealand just lately established a national program for tech incubator. I worked with the New Zealand government in the last 2 or 3 years, and that is what's published by the New Zealand government. Young entrepreneurs actually proving a bit of encouragement, a little bit of help in order to go there, to let them go faster. And it's not about putting R&D or credit subsidies. It's about enabling private sector to expenditure money. Tax regulation or tax policies will not do the effect. You need to have resources in order to expend them. Argentina. I'm not here to promote CITES. One of the biggest challenges of creating an high-tech ecosystem is lack the management capabilities or lack knowledge capabilities. And CITES is my best personal example all around the world, and I'm using that as my example all around the world, for a group of people, multidisciplinary, very educated group of people that within a year and a half succeeded to build management capabilities which are not existing in the entire Latin America. And this is just an example of the way to gap this very complicated risk. Three things that I would advise you to take out of this conversation for policymakers and for private sector. The first thing is that the creation of the ecosystem is not a spontaneous process. This is government responsibility. Policymakers. Second, the continuation of the ecosystem is not an automatic process. It is government responsibility. I remind you that two crises, September or the internet bubble and the financial crisis at the state of Israel continued to invest like nothing has happened. That's referred to that. And even if you will do everything that I'm saying, or any other smart guys, you're still going to fail. Why? Because this is part of the practice. I want to show you a minute-and-a-half movie about very famous failures, just to emphasize this whole idea.
After being cut from his high school basketball team, he went home, locked himself in his room, and cried. He wasn't able to speak until he was almost 4 years old, and his teachers said he would never amount to much. Was demoted from her job as a news anchor because she wasn't fit for television. Fired from a newspaper for lacking imagination and having no original ideas. At age 11, he was cut from his team after being diagnosed with a growth hormone deficiency, which made him smaller in stature than most kids his age. At 30 years old, he was left devastated and depressed after being unceremoniously removed from the company he started. A high school dropout whose personal struggles with drugs and poverty culminated in an unsuccessful suicide attempt. A teacher told him he was too stupid to learn anything and that he should go into a field where he might succeed by virtue of his pleasant personality. Rejected by Decca Recording Studios, who said, "We don't like their sound. They have no future in show business." His first book was rejected by 27 publishers. His fiancée died, failed in business, had a nervous breakdown, and was defeated in 8 elections. If you've never failed, you've never tried anything new.